morning. My name is Ben Bingle, and I'm the Director of Grants in the DeKalb County Nonprofit Partnership at the DeKalb County Community Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar on human resources. We have a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, we'll be recording today's webinar, and the recording will be sent to each of you by email along with an evaluation form so that you can provide feedback about this training. We also have everyone muted, but please feel free to use the Q&A and chat features that are built into Zoom, and we're going to save some time at the end for questions that you submit. And if you prefer, you can send those directly to me. If you'd rather no one else sees your question, you can send them to me, and those will be anonymous if you submit them that way. Like usual, we'll plan to have around 45 or 50 minutes of content and then 10 to 15 minutes for questions and discussion at the end. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Paul Lalonde, who's been a great friend of DCNP over the years. Paul's the Vice President of People and Culture at CEDA of Cook County, which is a community action agency nonprofit organization that helps low-income people throughout Cook County, Illinois. He's also the owner of HR Logic, which is a small consulting side gig specializing in helping nonprofits solve their HR challenges. Paul's passionate about people and doing the right thing. He draws from a broad range of experiences as a nonprofit professional, public speaker, adjunct professor, and a writer on his blog, which is titled The HR Philosopher. Paul lives in the Chicago suburbs with his wife and 2 children, and it's a joy to have him here with us today. Welcome, Paul. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Ben, for asking me back, and thank you for that nice introduction. I appreciate it, and excited to have you all here. And with that, I am going to, I think, get us started. So, HR updates for the workplace in 2022. As I start, I kind of sometimes start my my presentation with this question. You know, why is HR so evil? And I do that obviously tongue-in-cheek. I would hope tongue-in-cheek, but HR has a reputation among people, and a lot of it probably deserved in some ways. But I'm here to tell you that one of the trends over the last couple of years, and really the last decade, is a revival in HR to not be so evil and switch from a gatekeeper who you go to get in trouble to somebody that helps advocate for employees and help employers become the best that they can be. I don't think it goes without much saying that, you know, I mean, the workplace has been evolving rapidly. I mean, especially with COVID over the last couple of years, and even before that, there's been so many sociological, cultural, technical, legal, and generational landscape changes that have really influenced how we work today. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least touch upon the Great Resignation. And many of you may have heard of it or are experiencing it right now. But overall, some other terms are the Great Awakening, the Great Reprioritization, the Big Quit. There's a whole bunch of different things that that kind of influence this movement that we're currently seeing and working through. So the Atlantic called it a revolution of the employee expectations. Psychologist Anthony Klotz of Texas A&M predicted this back in 2020. People weren't quitting. So he came up with some thoughts and coined the term, there's going to be a great resignation in 2021 and then beyond. So by the numbers, last year, almost 18 million Americans quit in the first half of the year, which was a record. In April alone, almost 4 million Americans quit, which was a US record at the time. And then in July, the same number of Americans quit. So a number of small businesses, by contrast, are starting. Applications have gone up every single year. And that's not a coincidence that these two things are happening at the same time. And the percentage of remote work has gone up precipitously every year, but especially during the pandemic, right? So you put all this together, and the employees' experiences are changing. So there's a lot of theories as to why this is, but again, Anthony Klotz is the psychologist from Texas A&M. Really, people are rethinking life and work. COVID made them all rethink what was going on. So people wanted to resign before the pandemic, but they held up. So there's a little bit of that. Burnout at work, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation. But burnout at work is real, and employers need to be aware of it and how they can help their employees avoid burnout. Employees providing feedback, and then companies are not acting on that feedback. So think of how disheartening and unengaged someone would be if they're invested in trying to make the workplace better, but no one listens to them. So, okay, I'm done. Bye. Again, notice people are rethinking life and work. I think that's the most important thing. Personally, I look at it as in 2020, I was at home with my wife and kids during the pandemic, during a lot of times. It was frustrating, but it was also interesting to be able to spend that much time with your family. You get to know them on a different level you never would have before. And it made me personally appreciate what I had on a greater level. Now times that across the entire nation in many instances. A lot of people are having epiphanies, right? So I said all those new business startups were happening. People are like, hey, I'm gonna go work for myself. You know, I'm sick of having burnout at work. I'm sick of people treating me bad and not paying me what I think I need to be paid, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm gonna go do it on my own. And then employees are having an aversion to returning to the office after remote work. That is real. And I've seen it quite a bit. I don't want to come back to the office, people would say. I'm much more productive at home, and I don't have to deal with all these jerk coworkers that annoy me every day. You know, there are all these different sort of things that went into why people in the Great Resignation's happening. So I talk about why is HR so evil? This is what we call legacy HR, you know, elaborate programs, and they're the gatekeeper of a lot of organizational decisions, needlessly complex processes, forms, policies. People go to HR when they're in trouble. That's the policy. You know, that's a horrible response in a lot of ways. It might be the true one, but that's the policy as a default. People don't like hearing that per se because it doesn't really help their problem. And you need to fill out this form before we can process, blah, 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 blah. All these different things that just create that issue with HR historically. There's a shift happening and has been happening over the last 5-10 years where we're going from legacy HR to modern HR. And that is a refocus on people. You know, human is in the name human resources, yet a lot of people have lost sight of that. And you'll start seeing a lot of organizations who are more progressive and forward thinking, or just copying Google, because that's where the term started from. But HR is moving from HR to people operations. So you'll see people ops a lot. It's putting people at the forefront of everything they do. There are always going to be needed programs to support the functions of the organization, but they're not meant to be gates that people pass through. You set up common sense programs that help support the people at the organization and not block people off. You go to HR when you need strategic support and guidance. HR and the people teams are looked at as strategic thought partners, and in a lot of cases, strategic thought leaders. HR is trying to get from the no police to the how can we get to yes, unless it's illegal or stupid. And those are the only caveats. Unless it's illegal or just a really bad idea, how can we help you get to yes and succeed at what you're trying to propose? And then finally, analytics, making decisions based on numbers, not gut feelings. So these are the trends I wanted to talk about under that context. The employee experience, workplace flexibility, employee burnout well-being, DEI plus belonging, and then finally data and analytics. So these are the trends that organizations should monitor in 2022. And you might be thinking, well, I'm just a small not-for-profit, I don't have HR. Well, in some of my earlier talks with the DCNP, I argue that every single person in the organization has HR functions in some capacity. You just have to look for it. And if you're executive director or the leader of the organization, then these things should be on the top of your mind as the person who sets policy and direction for the organization. So while these are HR specific, think of them more again as people specific. No organization can function without people. So before I get into it, number one, legal disclaimer, anything I talk about, I'm not a legal expert. That's why all of you hopefully have your legal counsel. Consult them before you make major changes or whatever, but I'm here to kind of be a thought leader for you all to take back to your orgs. So number one, the employee experience. So we talk about, customer service, and the client experience matters. I would argue, well, if the customer matters, why doesn't the employee experience matter? Why isn't it when someone's filling out a job application and it's a horrible process, or they work for a horrible boss and nobody seems to do anything about it? Why doesn't that experience matter? And that's one of the reasons a lot of people quit their jobs and didn't come back. So no, there is a correlation. Happy employees mean happy clients, mean happy customers, mean the people you are trying to serve are happier when your employees are happier. So what is employee experience? It pretty much encapsulates what people encounter and observe over the course of their tenure at an organization. Employee experience starts the minute someone starts researching your organization to see if I want to work there. It goes all the way through that, the job application, how you're filling out the job application, to how they're being interviewed and how that onboarding experience goes, all the way until they leave the organization. Everything that they touch is part of the employee experience. So 92% of employers worldwide said that the employee experience will be a priority over the next couple of years. And that was through a Willis Towers Watson employer survey. So why is it important? Think of it like it's a Yelp review, and there are actually Yelp reviews for employers on what's called Glassdoor. So if you Google Glassdoor and go to it, it's like Yelp for employers. People talk about their employee experience. Don't go there. They're horrible employers. They don't treat their employees well. Versus people leaving good reviews and like, yeah, I had a great time there. I just needed to move on because of XYZ reasons. I would go back or those type of things. So just like your customers can be your greatest brand ambassadors, your employees are even better brand ambassadors to help you become an employer of choice. So what does it mean to be an employer of choice? Today's workers, especially nowadays, have more choices than ever before. They don't even have to work for anybody. They can work for themselves. So being an employer of choice is someone who workers choose to work for when presented with other employment choices. The choice is a conscious decision. Like think of Google is an employer of choice. People want to work for Google for XYZ reasons. In the DeKalb area, people want to work for X employer for XYZ reasons. You want to be known as an employer of choice, so people want to come work for you. And that just means that you have a lot more choices in and of yourself, right? So what are some of the benefits of being an employer of choice? One, better productivity. Your employees are happier and they'll perform better and more work for you. A healthier workplace culture. You don't have those people who are infighting and backstabbing and gossiping and talking about each other behind their back, which lowers productivity and creates a toxic workplace. No one wants to be a part of that long term. You have a better ability to attract top talent. Again, if people want to come work for you, you get to be picky. So how do you become an employer of choice? Really, any employer can become one, but it's going to take time and some fine tuning of your culture, your brand, how people think about you, your recruitment and retention strategies. So here's some hopefully tactics that you can take back with you. One is define who you want to work for you, right? Who am I looking to bring aboard? We need these particular skill sets, or we need this particular attitude, or this particular way of thinking. Identify who you need, and then everything else can define what you need to do next. So you define who you need, then how are you going to go and get them? Keep an eye on competition. It's a friendly competition, I know, at DCNP and in the DeKalb area, DeKalb Sycamore area, but keep an idea, what are others doing? If that employer ups their pay, can I afford to? If I can't afford to, what can I do to compensate for it and make people more relatable to wanting to work for me? Oops, sorry about that. But people you're trying to bring in, don't forget about the employees you already have there. People want to grow, like Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Just like in the workplace, people want to grow. They want to know that you appreciate them and you're investing in them. So don't forget about the employees that you have there already. Especially give honor to whom it's due. Employee recognition is huge. And I've taken it for granted over the years. I've been at organizations where I say thank you, and to me that's just second nature, just thanking somebody. I don't think it's a big deal from my perspective, but from their perspective, you would have thought that I just gave them the winning lotto ticket. They just couldn't believe that I was thanking them and acknowledging them. I was like, I'm sorry that has been your work experience up to this point, but under my watch, no, if you do right, I'm going to call it out and be like, you did well and you deserve that honor. That doesn't cost anything. So number two trend to be work out is the workplace flexibility. And I use this term very specifically because, it encapsulates remote work, it encapsulates work from home, those things, but it's much more than that. So remote work was really on the rise before the COVID pandemic. COVID pandemic really pushed it to the forefront and really sped up the process to where now it is essentially, and I hate the term the new normal, because were we ever really normal to begin with? But, I would say the new expectation. Workplace flexibility will now be a workplace expectation. So I just did a quick Google search, work from home in quotations, and all these articles popped up. Employees now have a taste for it, and many want to remain on some level. So the new normal, new expectations, some data. Over 80% of workers don't want to go back to the office full-time. Now that's the caveat, full-time, and that's where workplace flexibility comes into play. It's not so much that people want to work at home versus an office. I would argue that people just want the choice. Put it in their hands. They want some say in how they work and where they work. Most individuals, actually, a majority of folks, when you talk about workplace flexibility, prefer a hybrid model. They want some time at home and they want some time in the office. Now, I'm not saying 1 day in the office and then 4 at home, or reverse, where a lot of employers might say, well, you get to work from home on Fridays. That's not good enough, quite honestly, and people will lose favorability over time. Legitimate hybrid models, 2 or 3 days at home, alternating at home versus in the office, not just once in a while or when it snows. Legitimately, that's the new work schedule. 85% millennials, and I fall into that case in a lot of ways. And why I bring up generationally is it's the largest employment group. So if the largest employment group, this is their expectations out the door, then that's something that people need to note. Remote employment will compete with office locations by 2025. That's just a fact. A lot of people don't need as big of office spaces anymore. They can make it work much better without it. And then one other note real quick on generational stuff. This isn't a millennial issue. This is really a generational workers issue. There are tons of Generation Z, especially Generation Z, Generation X, baby boomers, all generations now have a taste for work from home in some capacity and workplace flexibility. So it's not just a millennial issue. Everybody is thinking about it. 66% of Flex Job survey, where these numbers came from, respondents said their productivity improved when they weren't at the office, when they were working from home. I can say that mine, and I can only speak personally, mine actually has, because I wake up, take the kids to school, then it's like I don't have a commute. I'm at home. I'm back at home at like 7:15. I'm like, well, all right, I'll just go to work, because what else am I going to do? Sit around on my couch until 8:30, So people are working longer hours, but then they're working smarter hours too. So I might not be working from, like, let's say 3 to 5, but then I'll make that time up from 8 to 10 because I put the kids to bed. I don't want to watch the news. I'll finish my work. It's letting people get the job done on their terms. 83% of employees feel they don't need an office to be productive. So that's the employee viewpoint. Employers, however, have a different viewpoint, depending on who you ask. Most employers, I think it comes from trust. How do I know that they're really working from home? It's like, well, there are ways you can do it. Is the job getting done? If the job is not getting done, then that's on you as the manager to make sure it gets done. I would say the exact same problem happens at the office. How do you know they're doing their work at the office? Just because they're a couple doors down from them? Are you watching them 100% of the time? If you are, then that, I would argue, is not a great work environment, because the manager's not able to get their work done. They're not trusting their staff, and then it just kind of spirals. So employers need to figure out a way to buy into this, because it's here. And there's a lot of benefits to it, not just the employee, but the work environment too. You get to hire better talent. If a majority of people want hybrid work and you're not willing to provide hybrid work, you've already alienated half of the working pool, right? So now you have less people to choose from. Higher retention. If half of people want hybrid work and you give them hybrid work, they're going to stay longer. These are simple correlations to make. Less absenteeism. This one's true, especially in COVID world. It should be standard practice that if you are exhibiting COVID symptoms, you need to stay home. Well, guess what? Having allergies technically is a COVID symptoms. It's not the allergies themselves, but it's the running nose, it's the coughing, it's the sneezing. You can still work, because most people deal with allergies their whole lives, but now they're working remote, they're working at home, and everybody wins. You're not potentially infecting a workplace until you can get those COVID results back to find out they're negative, but the person hasn't lost any time and they continue to be productive at home. Longer working hours. This could go either way. It's either a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on the individual. But like I said before, I'd wake up, do what I had to do with the family, then I'd be working at least two extra hours a day that would normally go to commute. So I've been more productive. Now that comes with some limits that I'll talk about with the burnout thing, and then finally increased productivity that comes along with some working hours. And in some cases, again, case by case basis, it has some limits, but there can be reduced stress level. I don't have to wake up as early. I don't have to go and commute, all those type of things. And I don't have to deal with those coworkers on a face-to-face that I just am not getting along with right now for whatever reason. And then environmental factors. Less people on the road means, less pollution in the air and more employee engagement. So I would say, just to wrap this one up, that flexible work is here. So employers need to embrace it. Otherwise, it's going to embrace you in all the ways you don't want it to. So ask yourselves, can the job be done remotely? If it can, work towards getting to that point. Again, not every job can, and you need to clearly define those. What are the limits, or what is the infrastructure of your workplace, work flexible schedule? What will you tolerate and not tolerate? How do you define what that looks like? Who will bear the cost of home equipment and expense? You got to take into consideration those things. Are you going to stop buying desktops and start buying laptops instead? Just changes what your infrastructure looks like. Will the organization monitor my work performance at home, and how? Again, I would argue don't go out above and beyond by trying to be too big brother-ish when people are working from home. Just implement the same routines that you had in the office. And then how will the organization monitor working hours? This one's more important for hourly employees than salaried, but still a consideration people need to look out for. And then some other questions to keep asking yourself. And in the interest of time, this one's real important, as you can see why I had a ton of slides. But I do think it's important. I think the overall mission that I'm trying, or ideas I'm trying to get across is, I think all employers need to figure out a way to incorporate this in some way. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to thrive as an organization anymore. So this all kind of leads into my next trend to be on the lookout for, which is employee burnout and well-being. If people are working more hours and they're not being mindful and watching, hey, I'm working from 7 to 7, where before I didn't work I worked a regular 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, that eventually will catch up with people. So what is burnout? It's a special type of work-related stress, a state of physical or emotional exhaustion that also involves a sense of reduced accomplishment and a loss of personal identity. That's the Mayo Clinic definition of it. It's non-well-being and signs of burnout. Emotional, physical exhaustion, difficulty concentrating, lack of focus, problems sleeping or maintaining quality sleep. Folks are having panic attacks, difficulty breathing, chest pains, intense migraines where there weren't any before. Often digestive issues, and people don't think about that, but new digestive issues when you never had any before. Growing detachment or cynicism, not just in the workplace, but in life in general. Resisting social activities, increased isolationism, where before people wanted to be involved and they were very social, but they've reduced their activities. Reduced productivity and personal feelings of ineffectiveness or lack of accomplishment. So a lot goes into burnout, and most human beings in some way have felt burnout. According to a Reich Stress and Productivity report, 60% of people who are feeling burnout began searching for a new job. 59% have been unable to sleep. 53% have stopped caring or checked out. 46 have taken unplanned time off, which can be very costly to organizations. And 43% have taken it out on family and friends, so it extends beyond just the individual. And then around 37% have lost their tempers at work. So these are some numbers. Almost 75%, 76% of Americans have been burned out at some point in their life. Nearly 25% of American workers believe that receiving better mental health related policies at work can be helpful. Women report experiencing burnout more frequently than men, 80% to 72%. I think a lot of that has to do with societal pressures that are put on women in the workplace, especially when they are supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to be the child caregivers, all on top of that, trying to have their own careers on top of everything that's been placed on women. Employed women aged 35 to 44 are more likely than younger counterparts to experience burnout. So it's the middle-aged areas there, and it makes sense because typically those are the age brackets that have smaller children at work or are trying to navigate their careers at the same time. And among employed men, those in 45 to 55 are 3 times as likely as younger men to experience burnout. And to a point, that makes sense, right? At that point in their careers, they likely would have been promoted over time. So the stress level continues to rise and rise and rise. So what should employers do? What should you do as an employer at the not-for-profit? Employers can offer, a lot of different things that can help their employees through this. Create a culture that supports, mental health advocacy and support for mental health situations. Increase awareness. And that comes with giving employees access and education resources. Offer trainings to your managers or all of your staff, really just about mental health first aid. And a lot of free training can be done out there. And mental health first aid is recognizing the signs of burnout or other afflictions that are starting to hurt your workforce. Encourage whatever you want to call it. I hate the term work-life balance, but whatever you want to call it, work-life integration, work-life blend, whatever the term, encourage that. Tell people to log off. Tell people to just stop working. And you as a leader at your organization need to do that too. Log off and stop. It's good for you, and people will see you doing it, and they'll follow suit. Develop mental health policies, treat people fairly, just treat them right. Provide screening resources if you can through your medical insurance, if you do have it. Monitor employee engagement. That's simple enough. Just keep tabs, ask people how they're doing. Then finally, EAP, if you can. And I know Kish Hospital has a really good EAP system that is nominal cost to a lot of organizations. So another trend to be on the lookout for in 2022, and really it's been a trend the last decade plus, but it's been brought to the forefront. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge why we're discussing this. Why is this a trend? And I think all these pictures speak for themselves in a lot of ways. Unless you've been living under a rock, which I know none of you on the call have been, a lot of societal issues that have been blowing up over the last couple of years have really pushed this to the forefront in a place that it hasn't been before. So what comes to mind when you say the word diversity? This the clear definition are different identities such as age, race, ethnicity, socioeconomical status. It's just all of our different characteristics put together. I like metaphors, so let's over the next couple of slides, I'm going to be talking about a dance. So if you're talking about the dance, diversity is everyone at the dance, all their visible and invisible traits. It's just the people who are at the dance. That's diversity. Oops. Okay, so what comes to mind when you say the word inclusion? This is the definition of it, but inclusion moves beyond simply having diversity into a space where people are being treated equitably, their ideas, background, perspective are all brought to the table and thought of in a seriousness. So when it comes to being at the dance, being asked to the dance or creating space for attendees to have a say in about what songs are being played, that's inclusion at the workplace. All this leads to a better culture. And I think I just realized I didn't say what DEI stands for, but diversity, equity, and inclusion. So all this leads to a better culture, and your culture is a shared experience that everybody has. Your culture is how you talk to one another, what you value, your customs and worldviews at your organization. So that's like a microculture. Yep, there it goes. So other important definitions to think about. Inequity. Equity. And these two go hand in hand, but first with equity is, providing different levels of support and assistance for individuals. It's treating people fairly, not the same. It's different than equality. Equity is treating people fairly. So the dance metaphor would be providing support so people that normally couldn't attend the dance can now attend the dance. So think of someone in a wheelchair. who can't drive. Providing equity would be getting the VAC bus out there and having them take them to the dance. That's equity. And I think this is a neat little chart that you can see there of what equity looks like. Equality is great in theory until you start realizing that not everybody gets necessarily the same treatment out of equality. Belonging, this is the most important thing. If all these things come together, you get belonging. That is when you're at the dance, you feel like you can dance like no one is watching. And you can dance in a way where you don't feel feared for dancing. So that is true belonging at the end of the day. At the workplace, that might look like you're able to speak up. You're able to be who you are. You know, from a Black standpoint, if you have cultural hair, you're allowed to have that cultural hair. You're allowed to have the braids or afro or whatever. In a lot of older workplace cultures, that would have been quote unquote unprofessional. But today, that's not. You are who you are, and that's professional. You belong here. So, and of course, we need to talk about racism. Racism is institutionalized. It's not always necessarily seen, but it's the results of that institutionalism. So racism at the dance is stopping and asking only non-white attendees for their admission ticket before you're allowing them to come into the dance. And anti-racist is a term by Dr. Ibram Kendi, who wrote the book How to Be an Anti-Racist. It is not the opposite. The opposite of racist is not racist. Being anti-racist is an action. It is doing things in a way that purport ideas, policies that suggest racial groups are equals in all their apparent differences, and there's nothing wrong with anybody, any particular thing. So while the last one, if you see the last slide between the picture there with equality and equity, a lot of people say it doesn't quite go far enough. So if you, I like this one a lot, and you might be seeing this a little bit more, but it kind of, I think, more clearly outlines in society what the effects of these certain things are. So you have inequality. Obviously, someone's getting an apple and someone else isn't. It's the same tree. They have access to the same tree, but one is bearing fruit and the other isn't. Under equality, they both have the tool, but the tool doesn't fit quite right. So one still gets more and the other can't, even though the tool is there. If you look at equity, you're fixing the tools, right? You're giving the people the tools they need given the circumstances to help get them where they need to be. But what we ultimately want to do is just fix the tree. The tree, if it stands for our infrastructure and society in general, that's what we need to fix. So ultimately, justice is fixing the tree so that it yields the same opportunity. And that's all it is. It's just opportunity at the end of the day. It's not about results. It's just about the opportunity being fair and equal for everybody. So leaders and supervisors' roles in DI plus belonging at organizations. Number one is they have to develop their emotional intelligence. That's knowing themselves, knowing where their biases are, knowing where their organizational biases are, and working to fix them. Leaders, supervisors should have empathy. They should obviously have fairness in how they deal with these situations, and curiosity and knowing and getting to the bottom of it. They need to have courage. In some instances, it requires giving up power. There needs to be that courage to give up power and give it to somebody else because it's the right thing to do to fix the issue. And then there's also, you have to have the courage just to stand up and talk about it, quite honestly. It has to be consistency. Once you do it, you got to keep doing it. Honesty, you know, work honesty into what you're saying. If you see a spade as a spade, then call it one and fix it. Give direction to the organization, say this is where we need to go to get to ultimately to a just and fair society. Communication is always key, obviously, with everything. Don't discount kindness. I think we should lead with kindness, and a lot of it gets buried, unfortunately. And true leaders assume the obligation. Think of it in terms of, if the baby is delivered to the fire department, right? The fire department wasn't responsible for putting the baby there. The fire department wasn't responsible that the baby was born and abandoned, but now it's the fire department's responsibility. So every person today is not responsible per se for a lot of American history and where we are today, but we are responsible now for moving forward into the future. And then here's some common supervisor tasks. And I think all of you will get the slides. I gave them to Ben ahead of schedule because sometimes I get a little goofy with that. But here are some things that you should think about doing and incorporating into your day-to-day as leaders to incorporate DEI plus belonging into your workplace culture. And then this, I liked this a lot. This is racism interrupters. A lot of times folks may not know, okay, how do something was just said and I need to say something, I don't know what to say. There are these things that you can stop the conversation and redirect it and let people know that that's inappropriate and won't be tolerated. Again, with this is courage, right? So I threw this in there because I love this slide. How to become anti-racist. This is part of the zones, the fear. Fear leads to then learning and then growth, but you have to get through that fear zone, and that takes courage. And then finally, the last item that I want to trend that I think you should know about is data and analytics. So data analytics, this might be something that, a lot of people talked about for decades. In the world of HR, this has only just started taking root and being emphasized over the past maybe decade plus more seriously. But data analytics refers to all the processes and tools required to process a set of data, interpret that data for which direction you want to go. So you're collecting data, you're analyzing it, and it tells you the story of where you need to go. That's called data literacy. That's the ability to understand and interpret the data. You can collect it, but if you don't know what to do with it at that point, that's an issue. So you need to become data literate. I have this data, what do I do with it? I know what to do with it. This term data mining, that's exactly what it looks like. It's just the tools for discovering, where are you getting your data? You're mining for it. You're going out and you're finding it. You're setting up your infrastructure to collect it. Metrics are just the measurements at the end of the day. It's a baseline. You determine what your baseline is, and then all the data you compare to one another, and it becomes metrics. And then data lake and data stream, these are just like how does data come across? In a lake, it's stagnant, right? It just sits there. It's long-term historical data. It doesn't move. You have it. Once you have it, you have it. The data stream, that's the tricky one, right? Because streams keep moving. That's data that keeps coming at you. So you need to collect it in real time. It's a little bit more difficult to get, but once you get, you have it. So why engage in data? Well, because it allows you to wield decision-making power that you didn't have before. It allows you to tell your story in ways that legitimize what you're trying to do. Oops. So from an HR perspective, here are just some, I think, easy to understand and easy to gather data for people who are not familiar with HR metrics necessarily. So time to fill. This helps you understand your hiring, the health of your hiring. So really, how fast do you get, quote unquote, the butts in the seats, right? So you measure from when the job is posted to when the candidate is hired. Average time to fill equals the number of days to fill divided by the number of roles available. So if it took you 45 days to fill that one role, you divide it by however many roles you have, and that comes out to the number of days. So if you're hiring for one person, and it took you 45 days to hire that one person, then that's easy math, right? It took you 45 days. If your benchmark, but you got to figure out what your benchmark is, right? So 36 days, depending on the role, is the American average. So if it's taking you 45 days to fill when 36 is the benchmark, that shows you that there might be something wrong in the process and it's too long. Not necessarily, because there are always these outside factors, but again, these are things that kind of help with some of that. Turnover, everyone at least has I would think most people understand the concept of turnover. That measures your retention. So turnover rate equals the total number of people who left divided by your average head count, then times it by 100 to get the percent. So some turnover is healthy. You know, you don't want the same people there forever, all the time, because then the organization could get stagnant necessarily, you know. And then it's good because it shows that you're growing people and that they can go on and go to other places, and shows you're a healthy organization. Too much turnover, though, is a red flag, and you're probably not healthy at that time. Over the last couple of decade or so, about 18% has been a normal average turnover rate, but it varies wildly industry to industry. Retail has a much higher turnover rate than, say, some nonprofit sectors. And especially now with the Great Resignation, it can be as high as 25% turnover. So think of how costly that is for an organization. Take it a step further and go voluntary turnover. This gauges health on a different level. How many people are willingly leaving your organization? And that means people who quit. It doesn't mean layoffs or retirements. You take all of that out of it, and it's people who turn in their resignations. That can gauge health on a different level. So the formula is exactly the same. It's just the number of people who voluntarily left divided by your average head count, then times by 100. Absenteeism rate. This one is really good to try and see, because unexpected costs, you know, when someone doesn't show up, you might need overtime or work isn't getting done. There's a cost to absenteeism. So the days employees miss unexpectedly. So you just take the unexpected absences divided by the period that you're measuring, and then of course times by 100 to get the percent. So if you're looking at the month of July, you take how many unexpected days people were out in July divided by 31 for 31 days in July, or 20 for working days if that's how you want to do it. 2.9% is usually a general rate. So about 3% you should expect for absenteeism rate. If it's higher than that, that tells you something's off. Engagement may be low. If it's in different parts of your organization, let's say one manager has a very high turnover rate or absenteeism rate versus another manager, there might be something wrong with that manager, or that manager may need more development and help. Employee performance. This one's, if you have performance reviews, you know, you just see what's the average. Are they a 3? Are they a 5? And you just kind of measure that out. That one's a little different because it just varies from organization to organization and how they measure their performance. And this one is just fun. I'm just throwing it in there. I wouldn't expect anybody to really do it, but employee net promoter score. This one is really fun because it helps measure employee engagement. So what this means is what's the score of employees who would recommend working where you're at. And why this is fun is because it goes on a scale of 0 to 10. You have 9 to 10 are promoters. So your employees who rate the company as a 9 or a 10, those are your promoters. Those who rate the company as 7 or 8 are called passive. They're, you guys are all right. Those that are 0 to 6 are detractors. Those are the people that do not like your company or your organization and don't want anything to do with it. So to get the ENPS, you divide the number of promoters minus the percentage of detractors, and then that's your score. And you ignore the passives because they're just there. You just ignore them. The number you want, obviously, if the higher the number means the best that you are, and 100 is the best score you could possibly get. Negative 100 is the worst. 0 is right in the middle. Anything below 0 is cause for concern. If you're at 0, you're like, okay, I guess people tolerate working where I am, but anything below 0, you don't want. And I just throw that one out there because these things can get very complicated, as all metrics can, but that one's just really fun. I like that one a lot. Then, of course, demographics. I think that one's easy enough to know. If anybody does EEOC reporting, which I don't think most in this group likely wouldn't, they wouldn't have the cutoff, but if you're looking to be more diverse, just measure who are your people and then take it from there. So ultimately, I put a lot of, I think, sources in here. I threw them in there. And then, hey, Ben, look at that. I'm just a minute over. I think we were taking bets on how long I would go over. And then there's me. So if you want to reach out to me after this, I'd be happy to connect with you and talk with you. I'm huge and love social media. So find me there. Let's interact. And hopefully this was of value to everybody. So
Thanks, Paul. I do have a couple of questions here. And the first one says, we're having trouble recruiting employees. I'm looking for any guidance on how to get people hired in this environment.
Yeah, I would say probably not trying to be a jerk about a join the club kind of a thing, kind of laugh about it. We're all in the same boat. Things that I've been trying to preach and what I've been trying to do at CETA, the organization I'm with now, is switching from what's called, we have a tendency, I think, when we're advertising for jobs, just throw up the job description. And there's nothing fun or sexy about a job description just thrown up, come work for us. It's boring. People are passing through. Anybody can work anywhere at these points. They have the choices like I talked about. So invest in better job ads. A job ad is much different from a job description, right? Job description should be an internal document. The job ad is just like any marketing tool. Come work for us. We are awesome. And these are the reasons why. And you can create it and be very, I think, fun, have fun with it, and entice people to come work for you. So that's a starting point. Now, where you're marketing, I would say make sure you're very targeted, know your audience, know your community. I know a lot of people have moved away from paper. They're not advertising in the paper anymore. Some still do and have success with it. You just have to figure that out. Where are the people you're trying to hire? And then lastly, lean on your reputation and try to reward folks as much as you can in the budget. And I know that's hard. I know as well as anybody, we may be a big not-for-profit with CETA, but we still struggle with budgets, and we can't pay necessarily top market rate. We just can't. But as much as you can, try and offer benefits or pay within that doesn't stretch your budget, because that's how people will get in the door.
Next question. I understand working from home has many benefits, and most of our employees can do their jobs remotely without sacrificing quality or efficiency. However, some of our board members have met it with resistance. What thoughts do you have about this, and what advice can you share about how to approach this topic with the board?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I would just say everything I talked about today, leading into, tell them the story. Do your data, get the data to show them. Bring in the news articles, create your narrative, just like I did with these slides. Again, whether people like it or not, it is here and it is not going anywhere. If you want your organization to not just survive, you want your organization to thrive, it must embrace workplace flexibility. It just, otherwise you'll be left behind. And hopefully it doesn't get to that point. but if you can talk in those type of terms in a very professional and fact-based way, hopefully you can show that your data, look, our folks are still productive. Show them the numbers of how they're productive. How many more people have you helped? I think at the end of the day, data talks where just general feelings don't. So hope that was helpful in some of that. And again, there's a lot of that, and I've had to kind of work through that as well. And that's what we continue to try to do. Just keep proving that it does work and that you are thriving, having workplace flexibility.
Yeah, and thanks to those who submitted questions. We've got a couple more here. One is, are there any new employment laws in Illinois that we need to be aware of this year other than the gradually increasing minimum wage?
You know, I when I was putting this together, I was looking at that a little bit, and there are some. Most of them are more, bigger employees. A lot of them that this audience doesn't necessarily have the threshold. 50 plus employees, 100 plus employees. And I'm not trying to discount anybody. I try to speak to the audience, but I would say that I would look to. If you do have an attorney on your staff, reach out to them to see what's applicable to you and your organizations. Certainly, obviously, the minimum wage is one to be aware of. There has been a new law signed in last year where employers of 100 or more have to deal with EEOC requirements with the state of Illinois. So now large employers in the state of Illinois have to turn in their demographic information and making sure equal pay is happening. So I didn't talk about that because, again, overwhelming majority on this call that wouldn't apply to them. But I strongly encourage all executive directors, one of the two bat lines that they can have is their HR professional that they know and they trust, and their legal professional that they know and trust.
And Paul, I dropped in the chat a release from the Illinois Department of Labor about new laws taking effect for 2022.
Awesome.
Just as I saw that question come in, and so I had that ready to go. So for those of you who are interested, that link is available in the chat. The final question here is a short one, but it has a lot kind of to unpack under it. We won't have time to go too deep on this, but performance evaluations, what say you?
Yeah, that one could be an entire thing on its own. I will say very, very briefly that the model that has been happening over the last decades plus sucks and it's broken. And talking to your employees once a year about how bad they've been over the last year doesn't benefit anybody, because no one really truly remembers what happened a year ago, et cetera. So the future, and really progressive, forward thinking, just anybody at any organization, is starting to implement what we call year-round feedback, year-round conversations. Those things that are happening all the time. And it culminates maybe in an end of the year thing, but you would have been talking and documenting and working with your staff the entire year to where that year-end performance evaluation is no surprise and it's no big deal because you've already talked about it the entire time. That one I'd be happy to talk with whomever if they wanted to offline on it, but Ben, you're right, it's a little more involved, but I can say what it is now is broken and there's plenty out there of how to fix it. And there was one more question. I don't know if it came.
I see that has come through from our friend Don Littlefield joining us from Minnesota. Thanks for submitting this, Don. It says employee net promoter score. I like the idea of this engagement metric. What's the best way to get this data from your team?
Employment surveys, engagement surveys. For that one, it's literally, you just ask them, 1 through 10, would you recommend to your friends that they work here? And then they'll put 10, or they'll put 0, or they'll put 5, or they'll put whatever, and then you'll have the data. That's how you gather that. You make it 100% anonymous. That way people will hopefully be more more frank, but you guarantee the anonymity, and that's how you get it. SurveyMonkey's great because some of it's free, some of it very minimal cost.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for the questions, and thank you, Paul. We appreciate your time and your message today. And we're going to be offering an HR update in the fall as well. So we look forward to working with Paul on that. As I mentioned earlier, a follow-up evaluation will be sent by email along with today's recording and the slides. We encourage you to visit dcnp.org, follow us on Facebook for upcoming trainings and opportunities. A reminder that nonprofit registration for Give DeKalb County is open now. Eligible organizations can register by visiting givedekalbcounty.org. Next week, actually on February 9th, we'll offer our first Give DeKalb County webinar of 2022. And if your organization is planning to participate in Give DeKalb County this year, we encourage your primary Giving Day contact to attend that training. You can register either at dcnp.org or givedekalbcounty.org. And one final note that I'll mention is that the Community Foundation is also accepting grant applications for multiple grant programs at the moment. You can learn more, check your eligibility, and apply at dekalbccf.org. Once again, thank you for attending, and a big thank you goes to Paul Lalonde for sharing his time and expertise with all of us today. Thank you. Take care.